Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Champion Chat, the podcast where we keep you connected with what's happening in Banyule and give you insights straight from the council chambers. I'm your host, Carl Garth, and joining me today is Councillor Alison Champion. Great to have you here, Alison. How are you today?
Hi, Carl. Oh, I'm fantastic. It's great to be here. Thank you, as always. Always a pleasure. We've got a special
Wonderful.
guest today, don't we?
We do. Joining Alison today, everyone, is newly elected Councillor Mary O'Kane from the Olympia Ward. Welcome, Mary. How are you today, and how are you finding representing your ward on the Banyule Council?
Thank you, Carl. Hi, Carl. And to my lovely co-councillor, Alison, thanks for the invite to come on. How am I finding it? In one word, wonderful.
I thought you were going to say overwhelming.
Actually, I do have to answer it in a two-stream answer. One is I'm loving this role. I'm really enjoying learning and getting to know so much more. My world is so much bigger. At the same time, the challenges in my ward are significant. I'm not the only ward, obviously, with significant issues, but the challenges are significant, and I am really appreciating being able to get stuck into them too.
Excellent. Oh, that's good. And look, I know that since the election, the last 6, 7 months, 8 months has gone by in an absolute flash. And I'm sure you've both got plenty to share. So let's start off with the last elections. There was obviously a bit of a shake-up to the Banyule Council. We had many long-standing councillors decide to step down, and fresh faces, Mary, such as yourself, coming in. So I guess the first question to both of you is, how has the new council, with both long-standing members and the new members, how's that really settled in?
I think it's a great combination. I think it's going very well. And part of the reason it's going very well is that we have our 3 new councillors who were elected last October are actually invested in their ward. That's so significant. You mentioned councillors who have either stood down or not won again, if that's the right expression. So we now have Councillor Rick Garotti and Councillor Mark Di Pasquale as the longest serving members, so that's 12 years each.
Mm-hmm.
And then Councillor Peter Castaldo and I are now on 8 years, and into our 3rd terms. Councillor Rick, Councillor Mark are into their 4th terms. While the longevity is there, we're also younger. We're younger. We're not either retired or of retirement age.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the case with all of us now. We've had councillors who only, as you know, in Olympia, we've had one councillor who ran in the last election, second last election, won their term, and didn't run again for whatever reason. So that was another opportunity for people to rerun. So the councillor group now, the look of it, you're right, the look of it now compared with 12 years ago is very different, and it's very different for a variety of reasons. And I will touch on that later in the podcast, because you've got some really fantastic questions there relating to the, sort of like the why of that. But it is a different face. And coming from the vocational education and training sector, I'm very conscious of how cohorts work together and function. And at the moment, because we have 3 new councillors who are invested and the rest of us are invested, we have a group that's just learning how to work together, really, as humans, which is not uncommon in a workplace.
Fair enough. Well, Mary, how have you actually found being a new councillor and working with the other councillors?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. I think one of the things, just from my perspective, following on from Alison, is that I think this is the first, in fact, I know this is the first time that Banyule Council has a female majority council. So there's 5 women and 4 men. I'm very grateful to all of the other councillors who have been on for a while now. So from Alison, right across the board, because they've been very welcoming. They've been very generous with their time, with their knowledge. So the learning, I don't call it a learning curve, I call it a learning cliff. Mm-hmm. It's like learning to rock climb or cliff climb. There has been phenomenal support as a new councillor from all of the councillors, the sitting councillors, but also from the executive team and the officers. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of support that we're given and the welcome, the very unconditional open welcome that we're receiving.
Okay. Mary, does council actually, as a new councillor, does council run any sort of, or be it the support groups, run any sort of induction workshops or governance sessions to sort of help bring you up to speed with not only the issues, but some of the regulatory frameworks that you might have to operate within?
Absolutely, Carl. And it's been very extensive and very intensive, and I'm very grateful for it too. Apparently, this is the first year that all local government councils have been mandated to provide a very intensive induction program. And that was introduced with the Local Government Act 2020. And so this is the first election since then. Mm-hmm. And I think the executive and the officers at Banyule have excelled in with the structure and the quality of information they've provided in the induction programs. Mm-hmm. It was, as Alison alluded to before, overwhelming to receive all at once, but really it provided a very solid ground. We knew we were on solid ground. And also an encompassing structure. So we knew where to go, and as information, our information has just since then just consolidated that, and also gives us an opportunity to go back and review it when we need to, for example, over planning issues, which I'm currently doing.
Okay. Well,
that's always fun.
It's like, oh my goodness, you said that way back then, did you? Okay, now I understand. Oh,
that's right. That's exactly right. And I'm going to add something about the induction training. Again, coming from the vet sector, I've noticed a big change in the 8 years. So when I was first elected in 2016, we were following the Local Government 1989 Act. And that was the last term.
So that's a little bit out of date, isn't it?
What's that?
That would have been a little bit out of date.
Yeah, it became a little bit out of date. So there have been training is a change that I have noticed significantly. So when I was Peter and I were elected in 2016. This training did not happen. There was none of it. I felt very blessed to be supported by my fellow councillors and the senior execs. Okay, yep. So we did have that. We were very blessed to have that. And that support is still there, very much so. With the 2020 Act coming in October 2020, for those of us elected, we did actually have mandated training, not quite as intense as what the new councillors are going through this year, but it certainly was a new thing, if you like. So what I was seeing was our senior officers had created documentation that was issued to us in that first few months, and presentations and education briefings, if that's the right expression, and they were mandatory. You needed to attend those briefings and contribute and pay attention in order to be able to say, yes, you've gone through the training. And what I noticed this year, or last October 2024, the documentation had significantly been modified, improved, increased based on the previous, and a lot of work's gone into that. A significant amount of work has gone into that, creating documentation to use as a resource for all new councillors as well as current councillors. to be in line with the Local Government Act 2020. What I've also noticed is there are a lot of opt-in sessions that are being created for any councillor who either is new and wants to learn more specific detail about whatever, whether it's a project or a policy or, whatever program, whatever. And we're all given that information. We're all given that time in the calendar. And we as older councillors or more experienced councillors are welcome to join to refresh or not. It's not a mandated training, but they're there. It's additional information. So there's a lot of information, training, resources being imparted to the new councillors this time round.
Okay. Mary, as somebody who's just gone through that, what do you think was probably the most beneficial part of that sort of training for you?
Oh, that's a big question for me when I reflect back on the enormity of that. So it started on I think we were elected on my results came out on a Friday. I think Alison's did too. And then we started that induction on the next Monday. It was beginning of November, and it really didn't finish until right the way through March. What was the biggest? I think the bombardment of information, while it and not having a government or an institutional background was an enormous amount for me to absorb. I think it was just how encompassing it was, and getting a sense of that very solid framework, being able to I think know where to go for questions, but also I think a really important part of that induction process was the relationship building process, because we were senior exec team, senior officers, councillors, we were all in that together for that long period of time. So I think that also was actually one of the biggest takeaways.
Okay. A bit like the old storming, forming, norming when it comes
that's it.
Yeah. And you know what? Yes. Think about our council officers have to do that every 4 years. They know it's coming. They can see it's coming. And depending on which local government association, area they're involved in this case, Banyule, it could be Whitehorse, wherever of the 79 councils, all the council officers, I learnt in the previous, at the end of my first term, that they actually pray. They pray very hard when it comes to election time. Whichever deity will support them, because they want to be able to work in a collaborative, respectful environment that achieves the best result, the best outcome for the community as well as council. So it's a very challenging. It is actually bigger than it appears. That October, September, every 4 years in local is bigger than it appears just in your letterbox. It's so much more than that.
Okay. Well, one of the things too with council is there's always long-term projects, and those projects span years. In some cases, the strategic vision spans 15 or more years, Alison, and we've talked about that previously. One thing for residents, though, is they always want to know, well, how's the delivery going? Are you able to give us a little bit, either of you or both of you able to give us a little bit of update of any major projects that were happening either in your ward or in Banyule, the progress of them? Are they still on track?
Yeah, Rosanna Library springs to mind for me. That started being created last term. We went and visited that. That would have been beginning of April. We had a look at that beginning of April, the progress on that. It's actually moving reasonably quickly. It's expected to be open later. So at the end of 2025, the end of this year, it's meant to be, I've heard October, but, I'm going to go with December. We'll see. But that's the plan. It's actually moving pretty quickly. And if you're ever at Rosanna Station, you can see the development. You can just, if you go there all the time, you'll be able to see the works being conducted on it. So that's one of our major projects that's happening at the moment, and it's in a great collaboration with the Woolworths Group. But also, there are so many residents who are so excited about that, going up and being able to visit that with all the facilities involved in that. So that's one that springs up for me. And Sherborne Ward, essentially, a lot of the projects were completed last term. Sherborne Ward is essentially up to date, if that's the right expression. But for me, I actually had a lot of calls during the election campaign from very active residents going, "Hey, Alison, could we have this?" And it's not something that was on the cards, but it's something that's now in conversation with officers, working through part of the budget, so on and so forth. Yeah. So for myself, and Sherborne, most are done. Probably the football ovals, the Monty North, Monty South ovals, those car parks are being constructed or reconstructed, one of the two, and they're in this year's budget. So those are kind of the tail end of the refurbishment of those two ovals. So that's pretty much what's coming up for me, as well as the Watsonia Town Square. That's still a work in progress. That's supposed to be completed by the end of the year as well.
And Mary, any you're across?
Yeah, so the two that come to mind that were in plan before I arrived, one is the James Street Playground, at the James Street Reserve Playground, which is almost or towards completion and will be absolutely gorgeous when it's done. It's based on a very well-known children's book, but I think they'd like to keep that a little bit of a secret until it's done. But it's very, very, very playful and lovely. The second is the construction of the pavilion at Olympic Park. Is well underway, and that will almost complete the works done there, which I think started early COVID. My focus, however, is very much on the West Heidelberg area that also is connected with significant parts of Heidelberg Heights and Bellfield. So we have a significant need to revitalise our social and community infrastructure. And while there have been projects, largely sports projects, the Olympic Park, Ford Park, the Bellfield, Heidelberg West, where some of the greatest disadvantage in my ward and in Banyule is concentrated, is in significant need of revitalisation. So I'll be focusing on the longer term projects of Olympic Village and funding for an integrated services hub, which the entire council group has come behind to support the integrated services hub. And also there's a master plan underway for the Mall at the moment as well, for the revitalisation of the Mall. This morning, actually, I attended a smoking ceremony at the Belbardia site. They're about to start construction there of two new towers. One will be social community housing and the other one will be affordable housing. So the need for an integrated services hub to support our new community members will be increasingly important. So that's where my concentration is.
Okay. So is that integrated services hub part of any plans at the moment, Mary, or is this something that you're bringing into the next planning stage and budget?
At the moment, the need was identified in previous terms. I have close relationships with a lot of the service providers in our area and growing. I understand their circumstance and they're all in very precarious situations. So this building is really essential to our area. it has been taken up by this council group. So I've taken it up as something central to me, but the entire council group has thrown its support around it. We need advocacy around it to get that funding. Mm-hmm. So that's the position that it's at.
Excellent. Are you able to give us a little bit of insight into, as an integrated services hub, some of the services that would be there?
Carl, that's a really interesting question, because a lot of people kind of think, okay, we'll have this integrated services hub and everything can go in there. But the needs, the social needs of the area and the services that are provided are so varied that it's not practicable or workable to have everything in that same space. So we still have a lot of work to do to actually crystallise the core centre of what that building will service, who will go in there, and that discussion is something that needs to be happen both within council, but obviously also with the service providers. It will require also a greater strategic overview of all the social and community spaces in West Heidelberg to integrate them, to have those needs met across those spaces.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, this is, that's great to get a bit of insight on that one. And the whole idea of having new councillors come in is those fresh ideas, fresh insights. Have any of the other, or have there been new ideas raised by any of the new councillors?
Alison,
you'd probably be the...
We usually come up with something, whether it's something that we would like to see, or whether it's residents, on behalf of residents. Boroondara Council provides opportunities for its community members to contribute to an award or various awards around urban planning and landscaping. That's a conversation that is still in progress in Banyule. What has to be taken into account is not just the idea itself and what it does to enhance the visuals of the area, but also the resources and what resources, as in human resources, are available for those particular events and acknowledgements. So that's a conversation at the moment that Councillor Peter has brought to the table recently, so we'll continue that. So something like, look, you know what, it sort of like goes in a conversation, we leave it with officers, and then we get back, yes, it's great, we can do this, or look, it's probably not going to work because of this. But to put fingers on, particular things, there are a lot of them. We're always saying, what about if we do this? Like, Councillor Peter is always going to come out with, okay, in this building, do we have all electric connections? Do we have no gas? And have we got priority there for car charging? He's going to say that.
What a great segue to my next area that I'd love to raise, which is around policy direction. Has there been any change, or have we got continuity? Because, Alison, you're absolutely right. In the last 10 years, there's been a massive policy around sustainability, the green in the environment, etc. With the new council coming on board, are we seeing any slight changes or even major changes to any policies or directions?
Yeah. But wait, there's more. Carl, I got more. We know that, say, Councillor Alida, and you know what? Councillor Alicia as well is sort of showing this kind of conversation as well, but certainly Councillor Alida is going to be saying how big's your setback, and we need a setback big enough for a canopy tree, and why don't we have that? And look, whenever I'm looking at plans, for whatever reason, I'm going, oh, where do the trees go? Where are the trees? And borrowing the neighbouring trees doesn't count. So, councillor leader is always going to pick that up, and
Yep.
that she's going to be saying that. That Councillor Rick is going to be saying, well, okay, well, how much does that cost? And where is that in the budget? And you know what? We don't have it in the budget. We don't have space for it in the budget. So what's coming out? Tell me what's coming out so we can put that in. He's going to say that. So we've got our little pet things that we bring to the table.
Yep.
Being on the library board, every now and then it's like, okay, so let's take Bellfield, for example, when many, many years ago, when Bellfield plans were drawn up, the Bellfield Hub, the plans were drawn up and they were being presented to various community members and consultations and so forth. And we got feedback. I wasn't quite on the library board at the time, but there wasn't a conversation around, have we got space in there for a pop-up library maybe? That was a conversation that came up after the fact, and there is a pop-up library in there now. So, Councillor Rick and I, who are on the board at the moment, we're going to be coming up with is there space for a library? Is there somewhere where people can read or use the internet? That sort of thing. So we've got our little pet things that we know people are going to talk about. Yeah. Okay. One of the things at the moment, there's another question about, can we go and visit the Waller Waste Centre? So there's excursions, can we go and look at this? And this is what's great about, it's often the new councillors who are going, can we do this? Can we do that? And it's like, for some of us, older councillors, it's a revisit. For others of us, it's like, oh, we haven't done that yet. Oh, maybe that'd be worth doing, So there are things like that that we ask the officers to do.
Now, you mentioned Bellfield, and we all know in the last term, the Bellfield housing work that was done, affordable housing. And then we've heard Mary also talk about Heidelberg and Bellfield, the disadvantage that is in those areas. Have we seen any more plans for more affordable housing within those areas?
Yes, well, what I was just mentioning before, that this morning that I went to Belbardia. So the two, so Belbardia is, it was cleared about 7 years ago. It's a big, it was a long stretch, maybe about 500 metres of 1956 public housing. And that was cleared. So that block is now kind of divided into 3 sections and will be developed. It's state-owned and will be developed in 3 stages. This morning was about the start of the first stage. So there'll be 2 apartment blocks on there. One will be 7 stories, one will be 8 stories. One is community housing, different forms of public housing, and one will be affordable housing. So that's going to be very significant. Another thing that the CEO, Alison Beckwith, and I are working on at the moment is actually to go around and identify within our area houses that have been abandoned or are in very, very, very poor condition, and lobby the relevant departments who are responsible for them to take some concerted action on them, to either to whatever that can be, but ideally it would be their repair and opening them up again for homes. So there's a number of things that we're trying to do at the moment in relation to public housing, but housing. But we're also looking at, and this is again council-wide, a lot of councillors coming to it from their own perspective. For the first time, we're and correct me if I'm wrong, Alison, starting to look at introducing some responses to rough sleeping homelessness. And in the next budget, there'll be some money to employ an organisation that can approach people who are sleeping rough and work with them to build trust and hopefully connect with them to connect with supports. So it's a very early stage for us. There's a couple of other projects going on in Banyule, particularly in Bundoora, looking at setting up projects to address rough sleeping in winter. So so there's action going on there, but it will be a learning curve and an evolving space.
Okay. You know what, Mary, with what you've just said, you've said something that really resonates, if that's the right expression. You mentioned the Department of Housing dwellings in Heidelberg West that need attention. Many of them are frankly unlivable, and I do mean unlivable. They are not to the standard that, I have in my house, cracks and all, but, I have in my house, or you have in yours, Carl, or maybe Mary, in yours. Okay, they're not to the standard. Now, what's really interesting is that if you are a property manager and you are an investor, you own a property that other people lease from you, you are required by law to have your property set up as a certain standard. And there's an expectation by this state government that the laws are followed, and property managers follow these laws as well, in that the owner of the property, who is the investor, actually creates a home that's of a standard that they would live in themselves. That's the mentality. And there are a variety of tick boxes that they must follow, the investor must follow, and ensure that their home can tick off in order for it to be a leasable property, let alone livable, but a leasable property. And yet we have properties like Mary is talking about in Heidelberg West that are actually owned
by the state.
They're owned by the state. And they are nowhere near the standards that private investors are expected to follow, and nowhere near it.
Yeah, although Alison, I've just I'll put a really quick comment in there. The struggle to get private owners to make their properties livable and to meet those standards is an incredible challenge around here too. At the moment, it's almost like state-owned, private-owned, but that level of property that we're discussing, there's almost not a difference sometimes.
Wow, really?
So there's a lot of work to be done in all these directions. And we have some wonderful people at Holstep Community Health Centre. There's a law centre there. And they do a lot of work. So I speak with them sometimes. And they do a lot of work with residents around here, and they're tackling at it from all sorts of different angles. So it's kind of across the board issue with the state of some of the homes around here.
Okay, that's disappointing. Okay.
It is. Yeah.
Look, I hate to use the term, but overseas they would be termed slumlords.
Yeah. Yeah. I have them literally, houses like that, literally within 150 metres of my house. I know there's one up around for sale around the corner. I knew the tenants that were in there before. Yeah, and it's actually very difficult to get some action with some. This is a minority, of course, when you look at the full scale of it, but it's significant nonetheless.
It is, and it's a bit of a cycle as well, because there's an attitude of landlord versus tenant, but then tenant versus landlord. So there's still that attitude. Yeah.
Yes, and there's not right on both sides, to be honest. In some cases, yeah.
Okay. Look, let's move on to another area, which is we're going to have another podcast on that in the near future, and that's the 25 budget. It is just around the corner. Are we able to get a bit of a sneak peek of what we think it'll be focusing on?
No. Coming
No.
council on the 23rd of June, Carl.
No sneak,
Night, get the popcorn.
no sneak peek. I'm
Log into
not
your
gonna,
Facebook. Away we go.
so disappointed in you, Alison. Here was me hoping for a scoop. Okay. Okay. Well, look. Let's look at some of the services that have actually, unfortunately, in some cases, there's been a real higher demand for them, and one in particular is the need for mental health services.
Mm-hmm.
And again, normally comes under state and federal health, but we know that that's also becoming overloaded. Is there something that can be done at a community level to help out there?
Yeah, usually local councils usually are coming up with something because their community asks them for it, and there's a conversation to be had, and then what possibilities do we have? We're supporting as best we can, either advocating for or supporting through grants, organisations who want to help those who need assistance, whether it's a roof over their head or whether it's sort of helping in a more mental capacity, physical capacity, things like your leisure centres. They're a cheaper option to your privately owned, like Belgravia Leisure, who's the tenant of Watermark. So your local council owned outlets are usually ratepayer funded, or there's a token amount that you might pay as a member, and it's a lot cheaper than a private enterprise. So it's a case of connecting with those organisations. So if we take like Bangor Health may have something, there are connections with organisations that can assist. Our officers also, especially say JETS, which is for our youth. They focus on our youth, so we can connect you with JETS. So JETS has organisations to connect with youth with to be well, physically and mentally. So it's very much a case of officers are well connected, and they're able to connect the community with those organisations, and many of which are actually, as you say, they're financially supported by state, federal.
Okay, so it sounds like in a lot of those cases, these are provided or formed with community partnerships of council actually working with enterprises, businesses, etc., rather than just being relied upon to come up with one or two solutions. You're really spreading the net far and wide and leveraging the community, the interactions and connections that you have. Yeah.
Correct.
And sometimes
there's often
go on, Mary. Go on.
There's often mental health dimensions to many of the support organisations that are working. If not to refer people on, I suppose it really also depends on the nature of the mental health need and age and a whole culture, a whole lot of range of things like that. So support services that do, like JETS, that JETS in this case being a council initiative, they have mental health dimensions to it. Himalo, who are a Somali community-based organisation, they also have within their programs ways of identifying and reaching out to people who are struggling, and having programs, particularly around youth programs, around young mothers or mothers programs, and providing that mental health supports. When it gets a little more serious than that requires significant medical intervention, I think, then you really needing the state services. And I've heard, because I've inquired about this, that the REPAT is doing some significant development in this area, and that's going to be important as well going forward.
Okay. Look, probably one of the other areas I just want to sort of finish up with about the last 6 to 8 months. Over the years, Banyule Council, great strong record on financial sustainability, not overspending, managing, and still providing, though, very good services whilst keeping the rate rises within the state-mandated fair go rates cap. So what are some of the initiatives that Council is continuing to do or looking to do to continue to provide residents with, real value for money or more value for money?
Okay, I'm just going to give you a bit of a time frame on what you've just said there, Carl. Certainly when Councillor Rick and Councillor Mark were elected to Council 12 years ago, Banyule Council was very much in the red.
Yep.
And it was very much in the red because Councillor Rick brought in a level of accountability. Being in the finance sector, he brought in a level of accountability that he wanted to see based on what he saw in his workplaces and his career. And that was quarterly reports to the councillor group.
Yep.
Their briefings, every now and then, they do come to council as an item, but they come to us as a briefing as well. So he asked for that. He started asking for that 11 years ago when he was first elected. And he saw that we were very much in the red. By the time Councillor Peter and I were elected 4 years later, a significant amount of debt had been paid down, and we're continuing, we're almost done. We're almost finished paying down a whole lot of debt that was incurred prior to their election 12 years ago. And so it has really been in the last 8 years that council has been in a better position, all right, and can find a little bit of something in the operational budget to be able to go, yeah, we can do that. That'll be okay. All right. So I really want to make that clear. We are also blessed in that our rates, and we discussed this at our last podcast, rates are not all of the rates that a resident pays go to council, but council actually is the collection agency for the state, some of the state fees. And so our council rates are some of the most, some may say the lowest, or some of the most reasonable in Victoria. And we do use them wisely. Yep. We use them very wisely. There are people who say we don't. Of course, there are people who will say that. And many of us go, this is great, I love this. So a really good example of what council provides for its residents that are free. Libraries provide free internet. Libraries are supported by the 3 councils. So the Yarra Plenty Regional Library Group is supported by Banyule, Whittlesea and Nillumbik.
Yep.
And so rates go into, each of our buckets, and some of that goes to the libraries, and so that all residents can attend a library, they get free Wi-Fi, and they can access library services for free. And library services are not just borrowing books. You can go onto the internet and you know what I learned? Here we go. I learned that you can, in the library, you go to the local library, you log on as a member, you can access ancestry.com for free. You didn't hear it from me, okay? Whereas if you on your home in a laptop, you're at home or in your own office or whatever it is, you got to pay. Okay. Hashtag just saying.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So how awesome is that? So this is something. We also have, movies on the move. When I was elected 8 years ago, every ward, there were 7, every ward had movies on the move. Now, there's a slight variation in a theme. There are a couple of wards that will have movies, and it's sort of rotated throughout all the wards. We have events like, so Malahang Reserve every 2 years will hold the Lantern Festival, and then the alternate year is Echo Fest held at Petrie Park in Sherborne. That's free. You just show up. And if you want to enter competitions, you can enter competitions, but you can just show up and enjoy whatever's on show. We also have, there are a variety of other events throughout the year. If you're a volunteer and, you could be invited to the Volunteer Awards, which we held last month in May, which was fantastic. That is a full house and it'll be overflowing because there are so many volunteers in Banyule. Now, volunteers don't pay for that. They don't pay per head. We cover that because we're grateful for their contribution. So things like that, that council continues to put in the calendar, shows up every year for residents, and we acknowledge our residents and celebrate them.
Okay. There we go.
Does that answer your question, Carl?
Not entirely, no.
Okay. What was the next bit?
The other part was
I've got.
Go for it, Greg.
Sorry, I've got a couple of things that I'd like to build on what Alison said in terms of kind of fiscal responsibility and initiatives taken. So Alison's just explained really the heart of it, which is the work done by Councillor Rick, Councillor Mark, and it would have been the councillor team, or the councillor group, sorry. But also in terms of emerging issues, I did note that last year anyway, that they've had the executive team have had a focus on working with people who've been injured at work and working with them in a way that gets them back into work much faster. And that has brought down work cover costs significantly, but as an extension of that, it's brought down the premiums, the insurance premiums that they have to pay for that as well. So that Banyule Council actually got a prize, I think a statewide prize for their work in improving work safe return to work area. The other thing is that officers or council as a whole is very conscious of implementing sustainable technologies and sustainable systems, ecologically sustainable systems that will try and combat some of the climate change issues that we're facing. And as a result of those investments, council's insurance premiums in other areas is also reducing significantly. And I find that quite innovative, really, to be working on savings by being proactive in these areas.
And things like whenever a building is constructed or renovated, the focus is on using electricity rather than gas. So there's saving a lot of money there.
100%.
On the running of a building. And then working on, is something becoming obsolete? Can we keep it? Can we give it longevity? If we can't, do we recreate whatever that space is? But there was something else I was going to add to. The rates waiver. We created that in 2020 for those residents who are challenged with paying their rates. There is the possibility to apply for a waiver. That is still there. It's still there. If you meet the criteria, you can have your rates either reduced or waived. So that's still present. We haven't removed that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Definitely answered the part of the question that I was after.
Great.
So, all in all, it sounds like it's been a very solid 8 months for the beginning of this council. So, Alison and Mary, before we wrap up, do you have any final reflections or any messages you'd like to pass on to people about this new council?
Yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to give us a call.
I ditto that. Our emails and our phone numbers are so easy to access, and we need to hear from you. So please get in touch.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, if our role is as a conduit for a couple of things. We're a conduit between the officers and the community. So if the community has an idea and it's like, where do I go? Where do I start? We often get the call or the email, hey, Alison, hey, Mary, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And that's where we go, okay, well, let's have a chat with an officer. So we'll put you together with an officer. And the officers do the work. They're the ones who do the work. So essentially when we're during, say, a caretaker period, so that's the time that council does not make decisions for it's about 6 weeks before an election day, that period of time, we are not sitting at council meetings. We're not making decisions. We're not briefing. We're around. We're still the councillor. We're connecting you with officers. And that's a time when stuff still keeps going. Council still keeps working because the officers are doing the work. So it's the officers who do the work. So if you've ever got ideas about what's possible, you can always give us a call. We're in the banner. We're in the Banyule banner. The Banyule banner goes into every letterbox in Banyule. The news from the neighbourhood goes into every letterbox in Banyule. Every month there is something from council in your letterbox that gives you an information about what's going on in your ward and what's going on in the whole of council. So our numbers and our email addresses and our photos are there. They're there. The last banner has just been delivered this week, but this is the second last banner. So this is May. So you open that up, you go to the back, and you've got ward rounds, all right? And you can see our numbers are there, our names are there. One of my colleagues came to me yesterday and she went, Alison, I don't normally pick up the banner, but I've looked at it and I've gone to the back page and, look, there you are. And I've gone, well, I love that you said that. I love that you picked it up and you bothered to read it. That's really good to hear.
Well,
we are easily accessible.
For those people who don't potentially read the banner, you will notice that in the copy below on this podcast, there will be the contact details for councillors Champion and O'Kane, as well as for the Banyule officers themselves. Look, Alison and Mary, thank you very much for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed doing this podcast today.
It's been fun. I love that you joined us, Mary. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great.
You can come again anytime. We'll invite you to the next one. Next one's on the budget.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Alison. That'll be my specialty. It's been wonderful. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Good.
Excellent. And thank you to everyone who's been listening or watching this podcast. We hope today's episode's given you a bit of an insight on the new council and how it's going. Join us next time on the Champion Chat, and take care for now and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks, Mary. Bye-bye.